Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you for joining me for another Coffee and Crime Time. On September 4th, 2023, 19-year-old Noah Presgrove was found dead on the side of Highway 81 outside of Terrell, Oklahoma, with multiple blunt force injuries. Now, initially, law enforcement believed that Noah had been the victim of a tragic hit-and-run, but then the medical examiner's report came out, and it revealed details that did not match up with this theory, and then more information began to come out about the days leading up to Noah's unfortunate and early death. I'm not going to go too deep into the specifics right now, but I can genuinely say that, in my opinion, something's very off about what happened to Noah Presgrove. The state of his body, the extensiveness of his injuries, and the vague and changing stories of friends who had been with him at a party the entire weekend before, it all screams that someone knows something, and it's very unlikely that Noah was involved in some random hit and run. Actually, the police have completely discounted that by now. But before we dive into this case, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, Day One. Today's video is sponsored by Day One, the best journaling app I've ever used. I find that journaling comes in handy during all times of your life. It comes in handy during really hard times that you're going through because you can write everything down, you can get it out on the paper, get it out of your head, you can do a lot of introspection, and it comes in handy during the good times in your life so that you can catalog your memories and look back on them later, probably during the harder times. I found myself doing a lot more writing and journaling because when you're looking deep inside, you figure things out about yourself and the world that you didn't know before and that you don't ever want to forget. And writing about your thoughts, your feelings, and behaviors can help you even identify patterns in your life that might not be serving you. And it gives both seasoned and rookie journalers a ton of great features that makes journaling easy and helpful and enjoyable, honestly, no matter what season of life you're in. Some people use a journal to write down their private and personal thoughts. Like me, some people like to keep a log of their life, their travel or fitness or food journeys. And honestly, no matter what you use a journal for or no matter what you want to use a journal for, Day One helps keep all of your information in a safe and secure place thanks to their user-friendly UI and end-to-end encryption. I love using Day One because in the past, I would write my journals in like little notebooks with, a pen or a pencil. And I have tons and tons of journals from my past, all written down neatly. But I have so much to say of late that using my laptop or my desktop computer is much easier. Even using my phone with Day One is so easier because I can type so much faster than I can write. And with Day One, if you're using your phone, you can voice to text. You can even create audio recordings. I love using the Day One app on my iPhone for a quick update, or if something happened and I want to remember it and I can't forget it. Or if I'm sleeping or trying to fall asleep and something comes to me, but I can't find my glasses, so I can't write it down. So I just grab my phone, open the Day One app, and start talking. And honestly, when it's kind of like the middle of the night and I just grab my phone and I start freestyling, I feel like I get the best, most honest, most transparent entries. With Day One Premium, you're also going to get unlimited photos, unlimited videos, unlimited audio recordings, and even unlimited drawings. But for me, security is my main priority because I've been in a position where someone crossed every line I had, where somebody literally violated every aspect of privacy I had. And that included reading all of my paper journals from when I was like very young up into, my mid to late 20s. I never want that to happen again. It was very traumatic, actually. And I know it might sound silly that it was traumatic, but it was very traumatic. And I just don't ever want it to happen again. And not only does Day One use end-to-end encryption, but they allow you to lock your journal with a password and biometric security. And if you want to make journaling a daily habit on your road to self-improvement, on your road to finding yourself, on your road to starting a new life and turning a fresh page, sometimes you may be just lacking the inspiration or mental capacity to think of something to write about. Maybe you're super stressed. Maybe you just have a lot going on. You're overwhelmed and you just can't think of anything to write, but you know you're going to feel better if you write. Well, Day One offers personalized prompts and templates to help get your juices flowing. And I actually have used these prompts many times. And I find it very interesting because they're not generic. They're not kind of like boring. They are actually very thought-provoking. So I personally invite you to try Day One Journal today. I think it will make everybody's life better. All you have to do is go to dayoneapp.com/Harlowe and use code Harlowe to unlock a limited time offer of a 2-month free trial of Day One Premium. That's DAYONE app.com/Harlowe. Check it out for yourself and see why Day One is the #1 journaling app out there. You won't regret it. Thank you so much to Day One for sponsoring today's video, and let's dive in. Comanche, Oklahoma is a small city in southwest Oklahoma with a population of under 2,000 people. According to the Comanche website, quote, "It is rare that you come across a town in which you find that the community is more like an extended family rather than a large group of people residing amongst one another within certain parameters. However, such is the case in a small country town situated along the historic Chisholm Trail in Stevens County. Set amongst the rolling prairies, pecan orchards, oil fields, and rich farmlands of south-central Oklahoma, the town of Comanche lies just 10 miles south of Duncan and about 60 miles northwest of Ardmore," end quote. So yeah, basically it's a small town. Everyone knows everyone. Very rural, fields and what else did they say? Fields and pecan trees and things like that, very, very rural. Located in what was once the famous Louisiana Purchase, this specific part of Oklahoma was designated as Indian Territory in 1855. And I feel like we've actually talked about this specific area of the United States many times in past videos, such as our Bonnie and Clyde series and the Bloody Bender series, this kind of like outlaw country and places that, the outlaws would go because it was lawless and the police couldn't, track them down there. Very interesting history of that area. And if you have not seen the Bonnie and Clyde series, I've linked it in the description box. It is the best one I've ever done. I still listen to it myself sometimes, like all the way through. I think it's 8 parts because it was so good. Like if I do say so myself, it was so good. So Noah was born in Duncan. That's just 8 miles down Highway 81 from Comanche. And at Comanche High School, Noah was a popular 4-star athlete. He played football, he ran cross country and track, he wrestled, and he excelled in all of these sports. He was a state qualifier in both wrestling and track and finished 3rd in his weight class at the state wrestling match in 2023. But it was almost as if Noah didn't know how talented he was. Jason Miller, Noah's cross-country coach, said, quote, "Noah was a good kid. I always enjoyed coaching him. He always did what I asked of him and he didn't complain. I think he was a free soul. I think he saw the world differently than most of the other athletes. He was so laid back," end quote. The only time Miller remembered Noah ever being nervous was when he cleared a 6.0 in the high jump at the state track meet. And Miller said, quote, "His nonchalant approach in that event always had other coaches watching him. I just picture him coming to practice on his skateboard. I never heard him utter a bad word about anyone. He was fun to be around," end quote. And he does. Noah seems fun to be around. There's some videos circulating and, there's people who talk about him, people who knew him. It seemed like everybody really loved him. Like he was just an all-American, lovable, kind of goofy guy who was, super cute, super talented, had his whole life ahead of him, but it was almost as if he didn't realize how much he had going for him. So he was modest and humble. And that's a great combination. Now, Noah's wrestling coach, Casey Rowell, also had nothing but praise for the teenager, saying, quote, "I got to be a part of Noah's life for the last 7 years through teaching and coaching. He was one of a kind, and he would have fought a bear for me. I would have done the same for him," end quote. Now, Noah grew up with many siblings as both his mother and father went on to engage in other relationships and have more children. And he and his sister Madison and brother DJ would spend summers with their grandmother, swimming, tubing, and water skiing at one of the many nearby lakes. At age 17, Noah became emancipated from his parents, Victor Presgrove and Casey Elliott, and he started living with his grandmother, Deborah Smith. But he also became closer to one of his siblings, older brother Dalen, who got a job working at Comanche High School when Noah was a senior. Dalen said that Noah was a class clown, most likely to get detention, but he was also the most popular, the most athletic. And although he was a jokester, he never made jokes at others' expense. Dalen said, quote, "Between class periods, I got the chance to see Noah going throughout the hallways. I got to spend more time with him and build that brotherhood," end quote. Dalen also said that Noah would often be seen around town in his beat-up red pickup truck that would always stall out, but instead of fixing it, he would just push start it everywhere he went. Apparently, the truck was leaking oil, but Noah didn't have the money to get it fixed, so he would just keep adding oil, and he kind of kept like an oil can with him so he could add oil whenever he needed to. And in 2023, Noah graduated, but he planned to take a gap year to figure out what he was going to do next, what was next in his life. Since he couldn't afford college, Noah began looking into wrestling scholarships, and he also considered getting a welding job or working on a shrimp boat in Texas. And he very much wanted to eventually join the military, enlist. His obituary would later refer to Noah as both a country boy and a ladies' man. The best kind, right? He loved being outdoors. He enjoyed doing anything that involved water, and he was a true friend to everyone. And according to all available reports, Noah was very popular and had a lot of friends, many of whom he would be with on the fateful weekend when his young life was cut far too short. So reportedly, and I'm going to say that a lot because there's a lot of reportedlys in this case. There's a lot of real vague kind of details, a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of things that don't add up. So reportedly, over that Labor Day weekend, Noah attended a birthday party in honor of his friend, Avery Jo Combs, who was turning 22. Now, in typical Gen Z fashion, partygoers received their invitations on social media and Snapchat, and many people were expected to attend the party, which was anticipated to go on for 4 days. Now, a lot of people call it a 2-day party. A lot of people call it a 4-day party. And people are like, well, what was it, a 2-day or a 4-day party? It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. However, my theory is that it was initially supposed to be a 4-day party, right? Because everybody's got off the Monday following, it's like Labor Day weekend. Everyone has off on Monday. They cook out and stuff. So I think it was supposed to be a 4-day party. But after what happened to Noah, it did not obviously continue. Now, according to the Tahlequah Daily Press, the Combs family, Avery's family, have lived in the area since even before Oklahoma was legally a state. Attorney Greg Combs said, quote, "There was a community of Combs, and it was founded by my great-grandfather, William Combs. He was from Kentucky, and they came here before statehood in about 1905. They farmed there up on the Illinois River, and he built a little church, and it was used as a school. It's still there. In 1929, the Combs Bridge was built across the river to connect that community to Highway 10, which was dirt until about 1960, end quote. So basically, the Combs family is pretty prevalent in this area, big landowners, probably considered wealthy amongst their peers, and they have ties, like founders of the area. They have a lot of family members in law enforcement, I believe in government, and there's a lot of Combs around. Now, the house apparently was owned by Avery's mother, Stevie Combs, and is located on a small dirt road just 1.2 miles north of Terrell, Oklahoma. Apparently, Noah attended the party on Friday night going into Saturday without any issue, and then he went back home Saturday night or early Sunday morning to his grandmother's house to get some rest before returning for more of the party later on Sunday. Now, we aren't sure why, but when he returned to the party on Sunday, Noah did not drive his own vehicle to Avery's house. And some people have mentioned that his truck was probably leaking oil the previous night, and so he didn't want to risk driving it. Now, remember, there's a lot of people, a lot of young people going in and out of that place all weekend, and reportedly, they've all given various accounts of what happened, and we're going to talk about that. But we do know with certainty that Noah Presgrove never returned to his grandmother's house again after going back to Avery Combs' house on that kind of Saturday night going into Sunday morning time. In the early morning hours of Monday, September 4th, a passing trucker called 911 to report finding a body on the side of Highway 81 in rural Jefferson County, less than a mile away from the house where Avery Jo Combs' birthday weekend was being held. Highway 81 is a poorly lit 2-lane highway, and it passes through Terrell. The speed limit there is 65 miles per hour. And initially, the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office responded to the scene, but they would soon report that because it appeared Noah's death had been due to a hit-and-run accident, the Oklahoma Highway Patrol would be taking over the investigation. And I always think it's a bit ironic, as a side note, when I see hit-and-run referred to as an accident, because, yeah, maybe the hit part was an accident, but the run part was not. Like, you knew you hit someone or something, and you kept going. You didn't accidentally keep driving. You didn't accidentally forget to report it. That was intentional. So is it really an accident? No, I don't think so. So Noah's brother, who's a little bit older than Noah, his name's Dalen, remember, he received a phone call around 7 that morning informing him that his brother had been in an accident. And then Dalen and his father, Victor, drove 30 minutes from Comanche along Highway 81 looking for the spot where Noah was still lying on the side of the road.
We started driving down there, and it's only a 30-minute drive from Comanche, but that drive felt like 2 hours just sitting in silence. And then we show up, and Jack and Caleb and the Jefferson County Sheriff was there, and Noah was covered up on the side of the road with the tarp, and it was just kind of a good 10 minutes just staring at fields, just and a loss of words, you know. When we show up there, everything's going through our minds of what in the world could, because it doesn't look like a hit and run sort of situation.
So you heard in that clip, Dalen mentioned two people named Jack and Caleb. Jack Newton was Noah's best friend, and Caleb was Jack's father. And we're going to come back to them and how they happened to be at the scene of Noah's death so early. Noah had been found lying in a fetal position, and he was naked, except for his shoes. But he was wearing mismatched shoes. Noah had an Adidas sneaker on his left foot, and we'll later find out that was his sneaker. But then he had a Hey Dude sneaker on his right foot, which was not his sneaker. And the ME's report said that debris and grass were found stuck in the laces of both shoes, but the Adidas sneaker had more grass and debris in its laces. Additionally, there was a pair of white shorts found near Noah's body, which law enforcement appears to have picked up, folded, and then placed back on the ground near him. And if all of this wasn't odd enough, because it is, it gets weirder. The outline of a stick figure was found drawn on Noah's right thigh. 3 pieces of a metal chain were found within feet of Noah's body. 2 clumps of hair, Noah's hair, were found. One was several feet away from Noah's body, and one was found without blood or tissue attached to it on his right buttock. Several of Noah's teeth had been knocked out and were found scattered around him. It seemed to only take a few days for news to break that the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigations had also started helping with the case, and they had ruled Noah's death as being suspicious. But any details from law enforcement were few and far between, with the OSBI simply stating that they were waiting on the ME's report before determining what the next steps in the investigation would be. Now, there are reasons that I believe Noah's death was seen as being suspicious even before the ME weighed in, and those reasons have everything to do with the way he was found and the state of his body, but also the fact that it was reported that no vehicle parts or debris were found anywhere near Noah's body.
I believe this is his tooth right here. His pants were folded up on that square mark.
His pants were there. His tooth was right there in that circle?
I believe so, yeah. And his body was here. And he was in the fetal position, facing that way. And his body was covered up with a tarp or a blanket type of thing. And as you're looking at it, you can see blood seeping through the covering and onto the ground. As I'm looking at it, it just seems weird. The placement of the body, the tooth, the shorts, where they're at, doesn't look like a hit and run. Not that I've been aware of.
Have you ever heard them say foul play is suspected?
I've heard suspected of foul play, suspicious death. And again, they don't tell me everything because they don't want to ruin the investigation, but they said that they've got a couple of people in mind on the situation, and that they're really looking in on them. So,
are you able to tell me who those people are?
They haven't told me.
But they have said that they have a few people in mind.
Yeah.
By the end of November 2023, Noah's family still had no answers about his death, and they were getting not only restless, but, kind of suspicious. According to local news, Channel 6, quote, Noah's family and investigators were told Noah had been at a house party that they would later learn was heavily documented during videos posted to social media. The videos are now being scrutinized by investigators. Documents also show investigators have been given conflicting stories about the night Noah died. In court filings, investigators said trauma to his body did not occur from a pedestrian versus vehicle collision, and that Noah could have been forcefully pushed from the bed of a moving truck based on blood evidence. End quote.
Since his death, the family of Noah Presgrove has searched for answers on what the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation is calling, quote, suspicious.
He was good-hearted. If you needed anything, he was there.
A family in mourning after 19-year-old Noah Presgrove was found dead on the side of Highway 81 earlier this month. Now they're looking to the public for help in solving his case.
Just finding out what really happened is our biggest goal. Now, that's what we're really wanting to ask people about, is if you know something, let us know.
The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation has declared the teen's death as suspicious, adding that they're waiting to receive a cause of death from the medical examiner's office. Presgrove's aunt says their family is also waiting and haven't been given many details.
Because of the investigation, the OHP isn't really releasing a whole lot of information because they don't want it to get out.
The recent high school graduate had plans of joining the service. His family spoke about his passion for sports, adding how he was loved by so many. Now they're asking Presgrove's adoring community to help bring them closure.
I mean, we need to know exactly what happened. There's too many stories out there. Too many.
While also reminding the public of what kind of person her grandson was.
Everybody says they loved him. He was a true friend. So speak out, say something. Stand up for him. He would have stood up for you.
Noah's family would have to wait 7 months for an answer because the autopsy report was not released until May of 2024, so last month. And even then, the full answer of what had happened to Noah was not revealed, and even more questions rose up from the details contained in that report. The probable cause of death was listed as multiple blunt force injuries, but the manner of death was listed as unknown. If you need a quick refresher for how autopsy reports work and why there's a difference between cause of death and manner of death, here it is. The cause of death being blunt force trauma means that the ME knows why Noah's life ended, like biologically. But when it comes to manner of death, there's a few different options. Natural, like he had a heart attack; accidental, suicide, homicide, or unknown. So, for instance, a person could have died from a gunshot wound, and the ME, who in this case is a man named Leonardo Ricora, he would have to investigate to see if the bullet was put there by someone else or the deceased person themselves. Or maybe the gun discharged while the deceased person was cleaning it, meaning it was an accidental death. So at this point, the coroner or the ME knows why Noah's life ended, but he doesn't know what caused it. The details of the report show that Noah was in very bad shape when he was found on the side of Highway 81. But before we get into those details, I want to read a paragraph from the report that gives us a little more insight into what happened at the house party that weekend. Quote, "Further investigation revealed that the decedent was at a house party and drinking on September 3rd, 2023. Then he rode an ATV Ranger vehicle with several men that had a rollover incident. The decedent was alive following the incident and returned to the party where he got into an argument with his girlfriend. The decedent left the house party and was not found until the morning of September 4th, 2023 on the side of the highway." End quote. Okay, so we got ATV rollover accident and fight with girlfriend. These two pieces of information are very interesting. We're going to talk about the ATV in a minute, but according to Noah's family and friends, he didn't have a girlfriend. So we're not really sure who he was fighting with at that point or who the people who gave this information to the police were referring to. And they may have said a girlfriend. And once again, we've talked about this before. Sometimes police taking a report, they mishear or they kind of use shorthand and it gets confusing. They may have been saying he was arguing with a girlfriend or a friend that was a girl. But either way, Noah did not have a girlfriend. We're going to discuss the ATV in a moment. So Noah's injuries are as follows. Massive blunt force trauma to the back of his head, which caused multiple skull fractures. One skull fracture that was running across his head split the middle base of his skull in two, along with multiple smaller fractures, which caused police to describe Noah's head as being caved in. 20 milliliters of blood had pooled inside of Noah's skull from a brain bleed, and damage to the parietal, occipital, bilateral temporal, and left frontal regions of the head. Quote, "The brain was swollen with lacerations of the interior surface of the left temporal lobe, brainstem involving the midbrain, pons, and medulla, and its adjacent cerebral vessels and left cerebellum. There was a fracture of the neck." End quote. Noah's C1, C2, C6, and C7 vertebrae were fractured to varying degrees, and the C1 vertebrae was displaced, indicating a severely and violently broken neck. There were abrasions on Noah's left eyebrow, the corner of his left eye, and left cheek, the front and back of his left ear, on the left side of his neck, on the right back side of his head behind his right ear, and on the back side of the right side of his neck. So that was a lot, but seems like most of his injuries, at least to the face, were on the left side. Noah was bleeding from both ears, and his upper and lower teeth were broken, with the medical examiner finding a few teeth fragments inside his mouth. There were abrasions on the upper lip, a laceration on the lower lip, and lacerations on his tongue. Noah had 10 broken ribs, both of his lungs were punctured, and he had internal injuries to his heart, his spleen, and his stomach, as well as internal bleeding of at least 3.2 pints. Additionally, road rash was seen on Noah's upper back, and grazing abrasions were found on his left shoulder, left arm, left side of torso, and both sides of his buttocks area. So once again, it seems like even on his body, the majority of the damage was found on the left side. The medical examiner also noted in his report that Noah had healed abrasions and scabs on his nose, both hands, knuckles, left foot, and heel, as well as a round healing ulcer on his right thigh. All of these predated the injuries he sustained at the time of his death, meaning they were older injuries, they were healing or in different and various states of healing, but they had not happened that night. So when he died, Noah had no drugs in his system. And apparently that was one of the reasons he had become emancipated from his parents, because his mother had a drug problem and, so he was emancipated, and he kind of made it a promise to himself that all of his friends and family knew about, that he would never mess with drugs. So he had no drugs in his system, but his blood alcohol level was 0.14, almost twice the legal amount in Oklahoma. And Noah's family continued demanding answers from the police, from the public, and from the partygoers who were the last people to see Noah alive.
The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation declared his death suspicious, but they've released almost no other details. Same with the Highway Patrol. The funeral home did give Noah's family a preliminary death certificate and listed the cause of death as blunt force trauma, but that's not official. I'm joined now by Noah's sister and his cousin and his aunt, Madison Rawlings, Ashley Chadwick, and Robin Smith. Madison, these friends at the party, it seemed like a raging party, and did the kids have at least stories that corroborated each other? Meaning, did it feel as though they were telling you the truth about everything they knew?
No, ma'am. We did not get told the same story by any children.
And sometimes we got told different stories by the same kid. So he would come and tell us one story, and then a few days later we'd get a completely different story.
And did the police know about this? Were they all questioned by the police? Did they all give statements?
Not that we're aware.
No, they were questioned by the police on the second or third day. They haven't been questioned since. There was inconsistencies.
Have you been able to tell the police? Sorry to interrupt. Have you been able to tell the police that you've been getting different stories?
Yes.
I just want to know, how he died. I want to know what scenario was played out that caused his death, and what happened. I just want to know what happened.
So we have this autopsy report released this week that shows that Noah died from blunt force injuries. It rules out him being hit by a car at that spot where he died. He was basically found unclothed. He was hit in the head, broken ribs. His teeth were knocked out. Despite all of that, though, your brother's death not being investigated as a murder, what do you think of that? What do you suspect may have happened that night?
Well, I don't want to just point my finger at anybody that I think could be involved or have any theories that are victimizing other people too, because in the end, Noah had passed away and nothing makes sense to us. So I don't really like to just throw theories out there, because if you follow the Justice for Noah Facebook page, you will get plenty of those. You can find plenty of theories everywhere, but I do think that something happened at the party that he was attending the night before, and I just think that people know and they need to speak up.
Tell me more about that. What do you suspect may have happened at that party? And we know that one of your family members told News Nation he believes foul play was involved. Do you agree with that?
I'm not going to disagree. I have no reason to disagree, but I know there's people out there. They claim to be Noah's best friends. They claim to love Noah, and I hope with my whole heart that is actually what happened, is that they were not involved at all. But at this point, I can't rule it out.
What is your message for people tonight who maybe were at that party, people who had their phones out, taking images, taking photos, who may have seen something and are not saying anything? What is your message to them tonight?
I just hope that they can find it in their hearts to just do the right thing. And if you're doing the right thing, then that's all that we can ask of you.
I mean, when I arrived on the situation, it seemed weird that they were trying to claim it as a hit and run, but there was no tire marks on the street. There was no car parts along the road. His teeth were sitting there next to his face, and he was wearing Hey Dude shoes if he had gotten hit by a car going 65, 70 miles an hour, it just doesn't make sense that the situation looked like it did.
What do you think may have happened that night? Have you gathered any details on your own? Where is your headspace about this?
Well, they classified it as no longer being seen as a murder case, which is, if you look at it as being premeditated or being planned out, then okay. But the situation obviously is not a hit and run, so there had to have been either an accident or maybe some sort of other sinister situation played out and is now getting covered up. But regardless of that situation, 8 months later, we want to know what happened, and we know what it's not, but we still don't know what it is.
Have they explained to you and your family why they don't think that this was a murder?
No, they just released, all we received was that quote from them that it is no longer seen as a murder investigation. And it does make sense, just because I don't see somebody planning this situation out against someone as loving and caring and good to get along with as Noah. I really don't see anybody planning a situation like this happening. So the next line is maybe an accident occurred, or maybe something else happened that night under the influence of alcohol, and they got scared and now they're wanting to cover it up. But whatever the situation is, coming forth and releasing that information is better than dealing with the guilt that they're now dealing with.
What kind of accident would leave your brother without his clothes, with all of his teeth knocked out, in a fetal position with these kinds of injuries?
That's kind of where we're at now, is trying to figure out what kind of accident would cause that.
After all these months, someone perhaps knows something about Noah's death. When I spoke with your sister Madison last night, she told me she believes that someone knows something and is not coming forward, specifically that something may have happened at the party Noah attended the day of his death. Do you share a similar belief?
Absolutely. It just seems bizarre that so many kids are around at the scene and nobody knows anything. Somebody had to have known something. Somebody had to have told a friend that they know. And now more people are hiding this secret and are now having to deal with this. And that's what drives me insane, is I can't wrap my mind around having to deal with such guilt every night, whether it's my own guilt or that somebody else had a part in the situation.
Noah's grandmother, Deborah, said that she's talked to some of Noah's friends, only the closest ones, but she really hasn't gotten anything solid out of them. She said, quote, one of them I've gotten a couple of stories, 2 different stories out of his mouth, and another one I've gotten 3 different stories out of his mouth. So, which story is true? I just pray to God that Jack has nothing to do with it, because I love Jack. That was Noah's best friend, and where was he, I hate to put that on him, but, I just keep going into my head. They've done wrong, and they need to stand up and be a man, regardless, end quote. Once again, Jack is Jack Newton, Noah's best friend. He was at the party that weekend. Now, the Oklahoma State Highway Patrol announced that they were not investigating Noah's death as a murder, even though the previous September it had been reported that his death was being investigated as suspicious. And since the release of the medical examiner's report, multiple medical professionals have weighed in with their thoughts and what they believe happened to Noah and why they don't think it was a hit and run or a car accident. But before we talk about that, we do need to discuss the events leading up to Noah's death, according to the other partygoers who were with him. Now, keep in mind that these stories are going to change slightly, and sometimes more than slightly, and we're going to get into more detail later on about who said what and who was where, so just bear with me. There's a method to my madness. In my personal opinion, the people at the party know far more than they're saying, and they're probably not being 100% honest, and this doesn't mean that it's nefarious. This doesn't mean that they did anything to Noah, but they're definitely not being 100% honest, I believe. It is absolutely true that no one is really telling the same story and that a few people have changed their stories as time passes. All of Noah's friends, however, state that they have no idea how he died, they don't know what happened to him, and some of them claim to have been asleep. This entire timeline we're about to go over is alleged because no one knows the truth, because no one can get on the same page long enough to tell the same story. So on Saturday, September 3rd, 2023, Noah drove his own truck from his grandmother's house to the home of Avery Combs. Several videos were taken that night and posted to social media, including one of other partygoers writing on Noah with black permanent marker. So this might explain why the medical examiner found a stick figure drawn on Noah's right thigh. However, we have no video footage of this stick figure being drawn, and we don't know which of the partygoers drew the stick figure on Noah, or if maybe he drew it on himself, because it's believed that after going home Saturday night, Noah washed off the marker, maybe from his back area, because it wasn't there when he was found dead, but evidently, or maybe he missed the stick figure, or it was drawn on him the following night. Apparently, that night, the friends also participated in some odd game where they hit or slapped each other, and I've heard Noah's sister Madison refer to this as Fight Club.
Come on. Yes, Shady. Come on, Shady. Oh! Damn.
There were also reports that on this evening, Noah got into a fight with his best friend, Jack Newton, and it resulted in them becoming a bit physical with each other. Some slaps and pushes were exchanged. Allegedly, this fight had to do with Jack's girlfriend, Carter Combs, sister of the birthday girl, Avery Combs. As the party died down Saturday night, going into the early morning hours of Sunday, Noah drove his truck back to his grandmother's house and went to bed. The next day, around 2:30 p.m., Jack Newton began calling and texting Noah, asking him to return to the party house that day. According to Noah's family members, his truck was leaking oil, so he decided not to drive it back to Avery's because it's a 30-minute drive between Comanche and Terrell. So 4 friends who were also attending the party offered to pick Noah up, and he agreed. But allegedly and reportedly, he said he was only going to hang out for a little bit before going back home. The friends arrived at 7:30 p.m. to drive Noah back to Avery's, and when they arrived, general party activities happened. Dancing, drinking, having fun, and hitting each other some more.
This range, I will fucking... Dude, I'll just beat the Kyle was like that hit me. I would just rather I don't know where. No, you slap me. I slap you. As far as I can. I do trust you. I trust hit me. I trust hit me. I trust him. Hit me. Hit me. Go ahead. See, I wasn't going. Which one?
Yeah, hand
We got it.
You see my wiener?
Country Pimp. One-on-one. Mike Tyson.
Okay, let me break down these videos a bit in the best way I can, given that everything is super ambiguous and who knows if the timeline is even accurate, given that it was provided sporadically by these people at the party. So in some of the clips, you can see it looks as if Noah is wearing khaki pants or shorts, and in some of the clips, he's wearing black shorts. It's believed that he was wearing the khakis Saturday night and the black shorts Sunday night. But remember, when his body was found, Noah was completely naked with a pair of white shorts folded nearby. Then there's this video where Noah's playing the Fight Club game with another young man who's been identified as Brylan Sweat. And in the background, we can see what looks like another person, a younger man, younger than even Brylan and Noah. And he's holding some kind of long rifle. Now, this is Isaac, but apparently there's nothing really nefarious here. I think one of his parents came out and said, he had just got back from shooting that day. He's just I think he's 16 and he's just a kid that likes to shoot guns, and nobody was shooting guns at each other. And honestly, Noah's body wasn't found with any sign of, being shot or any bullets or anything. So I also don't think it's super important. But we have another video where we can see Brylan Sweat and another young man that he refers to as Mike Tyson. Now, this person's real name is Mikey. He's reportedly only 16 years old. And it was said that Mikey got upset with Noah that night and accused him of taking his cell phone. Apparently, Mikey fish-hooked Noah, which, if you don't know what that means, it means taking your finger and putting it into somebody's mouth and grabbing them by the cheek. Noah bit Mikey's finger, and then the phone was later discovered underneath someone who'd fallen asleep on the couch. Now, it was claimed that between 10 p.m. and midnight, Noah and his friend Jack got into another fight over Carter Combs. Allegedly, Noah was flirting with her, and remember, Carter's Jack's girlfriend. So an argument ensued. Some more slaps were exchanged, and then according to Jack in a message to a friend, he and Noah made up. Jack said, quote, "The day before we argued about girls for a second, then ended up holding each other, telling each other how much we mean to one another," end quote. I want to talk about this conversation between Jack Newton and a friend that took place after Noah's death, because this friend had evidently gone to Noah's funeral. And the family had made the bold decision to have an open casket. That way everyone could see Noah and realize the damage that had been done to him. Now, the funeral home employees would later tell Noah's family that it looked as if he'd been beaten so badly that it was as if a gang of 5 men had attacked him. So after the funeral, this friend reached out to Jack Newton and said, quote, "Bro, everyone saw Noah at the viewing, including me, saw his face was beat up bad. Bro, I know what a beat up face looks like. Definitely not just me saying that. Everyone that saw him said that. Looks like he got beat up by 5 dudes," end quote. And Jack responded, quote, "He wasn't beat up. You know I loved him more than anyone, and I want justice for him so bad he deserved it. But I'm still really thinking it had something to do with a hit and run," end quote. And that brings us back to the ATV incident, which allegedly happened around 3 a.m. after Jack went to bed. He said he went to bed at 1:50 a.m., and this ATV flip-over incident happens after that. In that same message thread, Jack said to his friend, quote, "So according to everyone that was awake, all my close friends said that he wrecked my S by S, or SXS, I had around 3, and he was super dirty and super drunk, so a couple of girls helped him in the shower, and when he got out, he wanted to sleep in the one girl's bed, and she said no. That upset him, and he walked off," end quote. Now, allegedly, the girl's bed who Noah wanted to sleep in was Avery Combs, but she refused, told him he had to sleep on the floor. In a messaging conversation with a friend, Jack said, quote, "Yes, she just told him he couldn't sleep in her bed because he messed with her friend the night before, and no, by the time he walked off, everyone had left except the Texas kids and like our close friend group, and apparently some other girls that were there left after Noah did, but I just heard about that," end quote. Additionally, like I said, Jack claims he was sleeping when the ATV crash happened. He said he'd gone to sleep around 1:50 a.m. And this whole showering bathing situation is weird because apparently there was for a minute a Snapchat video circulating for a very short time showing 2 or 3 girls helping Noah get cleaned up after the ATV incident. And it was reported that he seemed very drunk, almost incoherent, like not able to support his own weight, not able to stand on his own. That video can't be found anywhere now, but people say they saw it and it exists. But there are some inconsistencies because apparently at some point, Brylan Sweat also claimed to have been present and he helped bathe Noah. But at the end of the day, we really don't know who was involved with it or what happened during the time people were cleaning off a very inebriated Noah. After being washed and dried, Noah reportedly put on a different pair of shorts, and then he started looking for his shoes, but he could only find one of his Adidas shoes, so he grabbed another random shoe before leaving, and that shoe, the Hey Dude shoe, it belonged to his friend, Caden Pressey, who was asleep on the couch. Actually, Caden was the one who was sleeping on Mikey's phone. But Caden's mother, Alicia Lee, reported, quote, "The shoes shown on the photo are my son's and on his feet. He just had ACL surgery and he was wearing a pink knee brace as seen on the Snapchat video provided to the OHP. One of these shoes sits on the shelf of my son's closet. The other was found on Noah. When my son went to sleep in the chair that evening, he kicked off his shoes and went to sleep," end quote. So according to the partygoers, when Noah left the party house that night, it was between 3:15 and 3:30 a.m., which that timing doesn't add up if the ATV incident happened at 3. And then he got showered and then got in an argument with Avery about sleeping in her bed, and then he couldn't find his shoes. Would the shower have been happening quick enough where he would have the incident, which wasn't right at the party house, it was kind of further out, got back to the house, showered, got dressed, looked for shoes? Is he doing all of that within 15 to 30 minutes? I don't know. But when he left, he had on 2 shoes and he had on shorts, but he was shirtless, and he left on foot since he didn't have his truck there and he'd gotten a ride that evening. It was reported by a few people at the party that Noah had been asking around for rides earlier that night, and at around midnight, allegedly, Carter Combs had driven a few people home, but not Noah, even though he was clearly looking for a lift. Another young man also remembered that Noah had asked him for a ride, and this was Caden Pressey, but Caden had been drinking and didn't want to risk getting pulled over, especially because Noah lived 30 minutes away and it wouldn't be a quick trip. So the ATV incident happened around 3. Noah was alive but a bit dirty. He got bathed by his friends, which isn't weird or anything. Then he wanted to sleep in Avery's bed, but she said no. He got mad, put on 2 different shoes, stumbled out into the night. For what? To walk home? When he lived over 30 miles away? Now, according to Jack and some other friends, it was not uncommon for Noah to get a bit upset and then storm away, walk it off, and then come back. And so no one really thought anything about it at first when they couldn't find him. But at 3:41 a.m., partygoer Jasmine Milan posted a selfie on Snapchat with the text reading, "Well, Noah's missing." And this was the last Snapchat or social media post from anyone at that party, even though they'd been actively all posting all weekend. Now, some people were like, that's strange. Why would you be worried that Noah was missing at 3:41 or 3:42 when he'd technically only been missing, between 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes? And I don't think it's too strange because it almost seemed like a joke, kind of like an inside joke. Like they didn't actually think he was missing. He'd stormed off and they thought he was coming back. And she was like, well, Noah's missing again. And whoever was watching would look at it and say like, oh yeah, Noah stormed off again. And they'd get it because they know Noah. It wasn't as if they actually believed he was missing. So I kind of understand that. I understand what she meant by it. And after Noah's death, Jasmine commented on her Snapchat saying, quote, just want to make something clear. I posted this picture not knowing Noah would never come back. It was normal for Noah to wander off. Nobody thought he wouldn't be back. So don't think, even for a second, that just because I posted that means I know what happened to him because I'm just as clueless as everyone else. I'm sick of it. Noah was my friend and I loved him so much. It hurts that people could even think that any of us could have done anything to hurt him. We all loved Noah. Someone is really out there thinking they got away with murder because y'all are blaming us for something we didn't do, end quote. And this isn't the first of Noah's friends to suggest that there was foul play. Jasmine says getting away with murder. Jack Newton has multiple times said like Noah needs justice, something happened. So it doesn't really seem like they believe it was an accident either. But Jasmine's sister, Stephanie Milan, also explained this to a friend in a Snapchat message exchange saying, quote, he walked off to clear his head, but he wasn't mad and there was no beef. We don't know why he got mad. No one had beef, end quote. Multiple people at the party claimed that once they realized Noah was missing, they went out to look for him. They searched roads and ditches, with Jack Newton messaging a friend saying, quote, after he was gone for a while, everyone was looking for him, they said. But knowing Noah, I bet he was hiding and didn't let anyone find him, end quote. To elaborate further, Jack told the Daily Mail, quote, they said they took my ranger to look for him in the ditches and stuff, but knowing Noah, he was probably seeing everyone looking for him and he was just hiding out, end quote. Now, Noah's family members have claimed that they were able to view another video of Avery Combs and her sister Carter Combs yelling at each other outside on the front porch of the house about Noah being missing, but the public have never seen this video and there's not a lot of details out there about it. According to the medical examiner's report, the 911 call notifying law enforcement of the discovery of Noah's body came in at 5:53 a.m. The first vehicle to come across Noah's body was a man in a pickup truck who pulled over to investigate, followed by a semi-trailer that passed the scene and turned around at Terrell before returning to Noah's body. Both drivers called 911. At 5:53 a.m., the exact time the first 911 call came through, Jack Newton was texting his father, Caleb, about their plans to go fishing that morning, and he said, quote, I'll meet y'all at the lake. Can you bring me a hat, please? Someone messed with mine after I went to bed, end quote. Jack said that he had overslept, he was running late, and when he woke up, he knew that Noah wasn't there, but he assumed that he'd just gotten a ride home, and he said, quote, he was not one you usually worry about. I wasn't really thinking about it, end quote. Jack left Avery's house and took Highway 81 north, headed towards the lake, and that's when he claims he came across Noah's body. Law enforcement had not yet arrived, and the two vehicles who had discovered Noah had blocked off the road while they waited.
I ran over here, asked him if Noah was okay, and the semi-truck driver had his hands on Noah like this, and so I just kind of, and I could just tell, that he was not okay. He was laying on his side, and he just had his eyes closed, and he had a cut on his forehead. Like, it wasn't just like terrible, it was just a cut on his forehead. The top of his hair was scraped off his head, and there was blood on his ears. 100% in my heart think that he was hit. I think he got hit on the top of his head by a semi. And that shoe that was on good just stayed on. I don't know. I can't explain any of it,
Is there any part of you that believes that he might have been beaten to death?
No, he was not beaten to death.
Why not?
Because just the injuries, you just could tell he's not. And I said, okay, I'll take a polygraph test. I took the polygraph test, and it was nerve-wracking, of course. I had these two things on my fingers. I had a butt pad and then my feet thing, and these things around my chest. And I didn't even get to look at the guy. I was looking straight forward, and he was talking to me, asking me questions.
There's a lot of online chatter, and I think that's the reason why they're asking for you to take a polygraph test about you and your father. Tell me about what that experience has been like for you to have to handle that type of discussion happening all around you.
I think the reason that I got brought into it is because, going through high school, you did not hear Jack's name without Noah and Noah without Jack. We were just always together. He lived with us for a while, and we were just always at each other's houses. And I think when everybody heard something happened to Noah, He just said, "What about Jack?" And just, I don't know. I don't know where all the crazy talk's coming from. Just sucks.
Do you feel good to kind of be past that a little bit with the polygraph test?
I mean,
do you believe that you're past that or no?
People saying stuff. I mean, people are saying like it's easy to pass a polygraph and stuff like that. It's just, I don't know. You can't really control what people say about it. You know, you just know what you know. And I've put my personal number on Facebook and said, if you want to talk about it, I'll talk about it.
So what has these last 7 months been like for you?
I mean, it's always been the hardest time of my life. And on top of other people saying everything, just been the hardest time of my life.
And so if you could tell there from the very beginning of that interview, Jack was one of the very first people on the scene. He tells me that he was leaving to go fishing with his dad when he drove up the road, noticed all the activity, and then saw Noah's body right here, bloodied on the side of the road.
So now I'm going to get into some inconsistencies with the events and the timeline. But first, I want to go back to the medical and law enforcement professionals who've become familiar with this case and who have reviewed the autopsy and what their point of view is, what they believe might have happened to Noah. Dr. Stuart Fisher is the author of the Little Book of Vague Medical Emergencies. He is also an internist with extensive experience in emergency medicine, and he reviewed Noah's autopsy for the Daily Mail. Fisher said that Noah's injuries were so catastrophic and varied that the most likely cause for his death was Noah being mortally wounded in a severe beating. Quote, "The poor kid never had a chance. These injuries are not amenable to surgery at all, not at the same time. There are 5 and possibly up to 10 potentially life-ending injuries. It's not just one," end quote. Dr. Fisher said that Noah's skull fractures were the most severe of his injuries, and based on his observation of the fractures, Dr. Fisher did not believe they'd been caused by one impact. The fact that there was air found in both Noah's cranial cavity and spinal cord led Dr. Fisher to the theory that Noah had been beaten by several different people. He said, quote, "This is very unusual for air to enter the skull. My guess would be injury by several different things at the same time, namely several different people at the same time." End quote. What shocked Dr. Fisher the most, though, was the lack of blood at the scene and the fact that one alleged bloodstain was found located a little bit away from Noah's body. And he said, quote, "Maybe the body was moved. There would be pools of blood. And if you're not seeing that, an explanation could be that that's what happened. If you're hit with enough force to crack a skull and cause a basal skull fracture, you would think there's something at the scene that's more than a paper cut. But if there's nothing, it could mean the body was moved." End quote. Dr. Fisher does not believe there's any evidence that Noah Presgrove was the victim of a hit and run. And when he was asked about the theory that Noah may have fallen from or been pushed from a moving vehicle, Dr. Fisher said it was possible, but due to the lack of lower body injuries on Noah, he didn't think it was probable. He said, quote, "If he was thrown from a car, you might get the body rolling and therefore injuries throughout the whole body as opposed to being confined in one area. Even if he hit the road head first, it would distribute the injuries up and down his body. He'd have broken legs from rolling in the road." End quote. News Nation also interviewed Michelle Dupree, a forensic pathologist and medical examiner who performed the second autopsy on Stephen Smith's body. And she had quite a lot to say.
Actually, I'm so glad y'all are looking into this because this is not tracking as a motor vehicle accident. I am very strongly suspicious that there was some sort of an assault or something before he was actually found in the road and perhaps even placed in the road to make it look like a traffic accident.
What are the things in particular, the evidence that make you think this is not a vehicle pedestrian accident as the autopsy lists?
There's so many. One, he has no long bone fractures. There are no fractures of his legs or his arms. He has injuries on both sides of his body. There was apparently no debris found at the scene. He also has rib fractures in his back. Typically, when we find fractures of the ribs, they're front or their side, but from the back means that he was hit by something from the back. But yet he also has injuries on the front of his head. His skull has significant and numerous skull fractures. This does not track to be a pedestrian motor vehicle accident in my mind.
Also, his shoes were on. Every one of those accidents I've seen, one of the first things you notice is that people literally are out of their shoes. Stephen Smith seemed to have his shoes on as well, right?
That's true. And a lot of times that is correct. The person is knocked out of their shoes, but it doesn't always happen. And in Stephen Smith's case, I don't believe that he was hit by the vehicle itself, but by something on the vehicle. And that's why his shoes were still left on.
News Nation also spoke to certified death investigator from Jacksonville State University, Joseph Scott Morgan.
With your prism and how you look at things, I thought maybe this would tell a story that we're not seeing. Start with this. The back of his head was caved in. Some of his teeth were missing and scattered where he was found. His nose and his cheeks appeared broken. His body seemed beaten and swollen. His fingertips were torn up. There was gravel under his nails. There was road rash on his hip and gravel rash on his shoulder. We're working on getting the list up, but I know that you have a good memory. So, Joseph Scott Morgan, what does that tell you?
Yeah, this large injury that Noah sustained to the back of his head is interesting to me, because that is likely a point of impact, perhaps. Now, that impact can arise from any number of things: falling from a moving vehicle as a pedestrian, maybe being pushed out. It could also arise from an attack that preceded being left on the side of the road. So for us in forensics, it's very important to examine that particular injury very carefully. And at the risk of being too gruesome here, we would shave the head in that area to pick up on any particular pattern. Sometimes the road will produce stuff, but you can also have instruments that are used. Blunt trauma is what we're talking about here, Ash. And you look for that abraded pattern there. So that's something that we would certainly look at, particularly as it applies to this head injury. It sounds horrible.
I think you and I did a couple of cases together where there's a lot of talk about, specific geographic locations of dirt or gravel. Yeah. Dirt here is not the same as dirt 15 blocks down the road. And so would there be an interest in figuring out the gravel that was found on his hip, the gravel that was found on his shoulder, versus the gravel where he was actually discovered?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Forensic geology is what comes into play here. You begin to think about this area and the topography, also the composition of the local soil. And we're talking about a roadbed too. So folks at home will get an idea of what's referred to as like pea gravel. It's kind of the bed that's laid down. You can see it on the shoulders of the road. So I would want to make sure that anything that is recovered or was recovered from Noah's remains actually marries up with what you're seeing at that site, or did this occur elsewhere? That's going to be very, very important here in this particular case, because I got to tell you, Ashley, I've worked a lot of cases over my career where we've had bodies that were dumped along the side of the road because it's convenient for that to happen.
Yeah. The other thing is the investigator told the family, this has to be quick, but the gravel rash happened first and the road rash happened when someone placed him on the highway. That's what the investigators intimated to the family. What does that mean?
Well, the road rash itself that they're talking about, that almost sounds like a dragging event, Ash, and you'll get these kind of striated abrasions that come along with that. It's very distinctive when you take a look at this, and that's the transfer of the surface, the friction of the surface to the underlying skin. And keep in mind, and I got to say this, look, you're talking about a kid here that's completely nude. One of the things that I'm going to do anytime, it doesn't matter if male or female, doing a rape kit, going to do a rape kit. And I know that they said that they found underwear adjacent. I want to know the status of that underwear as well. Was it ripped away? Was it twisted and torn? That's something that we see in motor vehicle accidents. I want to know how the underwear got off his body, and I want to know where the rest of his clothing is.
So it seems as if the location where Noah was found was more of a dump site than a crime scene, at least according to the experts, and retired FBI agent Jennifer Coffindagger agrees.
And the whole situation just doesn't make sense when you look at the timeline of everything. First of all, this ATV accident, which could have accounted for some of these blunt force injuries that he suffered. Then going back, and there were writings that were actually done on his body that were then removed, and the teeth location, I mean, over feet away from his body. All of that doesn't make sense. From my understanding, they've ruled out a motor vehicle accident actually hitting him. But was he somehow thrown or came out of a vehicle to end up in this position? so many unanswered questions. And I'm so surprised that law enforcement hasn't, after 8 months, Natasha, focused in on who the suspects may be.
Dr. Michael Baden, board-certified pathologist, told Fox News that the Emmys report revealed many details about the night that Noah died. He said, quote, he had a lot of internal bleeding, so his heart kept pumping for a little bit after he was struck. But if there's the possibility that in an ATV accident, he may have punctured a lung and was bleeding slowly, and then as he's walking along the highway, the bleeding gets worse and he collapses, and then a truck hits him and causes all the injuries on that account. But that would a lot depend on what his condition was when he gets back to the party, end quote. He means gets back to the party after the ATV incident. Michael Baden also said that with the amount of alcohol in his system, Noah may not have even known he'd sustained significant injuries from the ATV accident, leading to internal bleeding, which is what he would eventually die from. Even Noah's friends may not have been aware that Noah was injured. Baden said, quote, they assumed whatever difference of appearance he had was because he was drinking, not because of the ATV injury, which would not have caused him to collapse or anything until the internal bleeding had occurred, since it was a small leak, a small laceration to the lung. The only thing that could cause the extent of the injuries to his head and spine would be a car wheel coming over him, or likely a truck and probably on the ground. And I think either he was internally bleeding and intoxicated walking along the highway, and he collapses and he's lying there and the vehicle comes and hits him in the head while he's on the side of the road, end quote. After Jack Newton drove up on Noah's body, he reportedly called his father, Caleb Newton, to let him know the bad news. At 6:05 a.m., Jack had been headed to the lake to go fishing with his father and grandfather, but obviously those plans would be sidetracked for the day. Caleb Newton drove to the area of Highway 81 to meet his son, and while the two were there, allegedly a few things happened that seemed a bit off. It's been reported that when Jack arrived at the scene, it was a lot earlier than he'd previously stated. He got there at 5:15 a.m., and he showed no emotion and said nothing before taking Noah's shorts, driving off, and returning with a different pair of shorts that he then folded up and placed by Noah's body. And I'm going to be very honest with you, I don't know how much of this I believe. I think that maybe that happened, but not at the time that it's being claimed it happened. It just doesn't really make sense. So Jack claims he saw a police officer take Noah's shorts out of the road, fold them, and place them near his body, which the police officer shouldn't be doing that anyways. But get this. Noah had been wearing those shorts when he left, allegedly, the white shorts. Those were allegedly the ones he changed into after his weird shower that people felt they needed to help him with. He's wearing them when he leaves. But when he's found, he's naked and the shorts are next to his body, but they're not damaged. They're not ripped. There's like some scuff marks maybe from the road, but nothing else. So how did they get off of his body? How did they get off of his body? That doesn't make any sense. Did he take them off and he was walking down the highway naked? I don't understand. But additionally, there have been reports that Jack's father, Caleb Newton, pulled a tooth from his pocket and tossed it onto the side of the road near Noah's body. And Caden Pressey, back at Avery's house, wrote on Facebook that he recalls Jack Newton banging into the house at 5:15 a.m. to announce to everyone that Noah was dead. The Facebook post reads, quote, my name is Caden. I was the owner of the red Cherokee and the owner of the other gray Hey Dude found on Noah's body. I know you all might have many questions to ask me, and I will do my best to expose all of the people lying about Noah, aka spreading misinformation and saying stuff that isn't true. I haven't been active on social media because I've only been talking to people who need to know, the police, the family, and detectives. I did not want to come on here due to people twisting what I will say about this. From the start, I've told the God's honest truth and nothing less. Noah is my friend, and I can't let all of these people keep on lying about him. I was woken up at 5:15 due to Jack bursting through the door of the house, alerting everyone that Noah was dead. I woke up 3 boys and looked for my Hey Dude for about 2 minutes, ending up not finding it, so I went with one shoe and ran to my red Jeep Cherokee and drove a mile down the road to where a white semi and a white service truck was. We were there for about 2 to 5 minutes before being told that we needed to leave. Noah was wearing black shorts when we showed up. His body was tampered with, and I will stand by that in court and any test. When we got back to the house, everyone went back to sleep like nothing happened. I stayed up the whole time thinking to myself, how and why did this happen? Because at the time we were under the assumption he had gotten hit by a car, end quote. Additionally, Caden was asked if he ever recalled Jack going to sleep at the party, and he said, quote, he was awake when I went to sleep about 3 in the house with everyone else and Noah, end quote. In response to this, Carter Combs, who remember is Jack's girlfriend and Avery Combs' sister, she wrote on Facebook, quote, the 911 call was made at 5:53 a.m. or close to that, I believe. So the whole 5:15 is wrong, and phone calls and texts will prove that, like they did. I also want to mention out of everyone there, Jack has been the only one to take a lie detector willingly and pass it too. and he's been cleared from the investigation. Also, I'd like to mention Jack just didn't walk in and tell us Noah had passed away. He came running in and buried his head into my bed saying Noah was gone, stayed for a minute and said, I got to get back to Noah. I can't leave him alone there. Also, like the phones do show, none of us went back to sleep. Me, Logan, Avery, and Jazz and her parents stayed outside crying, not understanding any of this, just like you. But this is also spreading lies, and I will stand by that in court too. And I pray to God Noah gets justice, and all of his family and friends have peace. This has gone on way too long with no answers. Noah is the only victim here. End quote. So Jack's father, Caleb, has also posted on Facebook to clear up some swirling rumors about his participation in what happened to Noah. Many people have stated that Caleb was at the house party that weekend and that he'd been caught by Noah at some point, either Saturday or Sunday, being intimate with a female friend of his son's, even though obviously he was a much older man and a married man. Caleb denies being at the house party at all. He claimed he was at the home of a friend for a cookout an hour away, south of Duncan. I'm going to read a portion of his Facebook statement, and then we'll discuss. Quote, everyone that I've asked has advised me to social media silence because every comment or piece of info is met with attacks no matter how valid, but here's mine. We had a plan to fish that morning with me, my son, and my dad, supposedly to meet at my house at 6:30. My son texted me at 5:53 a.m. saying he'd overslept a bit and he'd meet us at the ramp and to bring him a hat. He couldn't find his, to my knowledge. I don't think he knew Noah was even missing yet then. At about 6:05, I got a call no parent ever wants to get. It was short and hard to understand him, but he had driven up on Noah. There were already a couple vehicles there that had made the 911 call. I called my dad, told him about the call. He said, come pick me up on the way, and we drive straight there. By the time we arrived, there were several law enforcement and fire and rescue on the job. I went to console my son. Yes, I was on the scene. Then it was being treated as an accident, not a crime scene. We were all trying to piece together what happened. I'd been on the scene just a few minutes when I called to tell his dad. It wasn't until the ME got there and told us that his injuries weren't extensive enough to have been a car strike. End quote. So the problem here is that Caleb has given a few different stories about where he was that morning when he got the call from Jack about Noah. In that post, Caleb said he was home and about to leave to meet his dad at the lake at 6:30. And when he called his dad to let him know he wasn't going fishing because of what had happened with Noah, the father, Caleb's father, told Caleb to come pick him up before going to Highway 81. In another statement, Caleb claimed his father was supposed to meet him at his house at 6:30, and in yet another statement, Caleb claimed he was on his boat when he got Jack's call. And you might say, okay, maybe he didn't mean he was on his boat in the water. Maybe he was on it in his driveway getting it ready. That's what I thought initially. But in yet another statement, Caleb said that his father was at home getting the boat ready. So reportedly, Caleb Newton did stay on the highway until the scene was processed and cleared. And while he did this, Jasmine and Stephanie Milan's mother, Renee, showed up to the party house and, quote, ran everyone off before she started cleaning, with some reporting that there was a strong smell of bleach in the house later that day. Remember that Carter Combs, in her Facebook response to Caden Pressey, said she and a few others, along with Jasmine and her parents, stayed outside crying, which doesn't really line up with Renee showing up and running everyone off before she started cleaning. But let's go to another inconsistency found in a message from Jack to his friend Justin, where he said, quote, I went to bed a little before 1. He passed away around 4, walked away from the house around 3:30, according to everyone there, end quote. So the time that Jack went to bed keeps getting earlier and earlier, and he seems to know or is guessing what time Noah died. Not sure how he'd really know that, but I will now continue on with Caleb Newton's Facebook statement. He said, quote, then the scene was cleared and processed. I went with HP to inspect the UTV, but there were no signs of damage or cleaning. It was still very dusty. It's an old UTV. If it tipped, it was minor enough to not leave scratches. Just a couple days later, I was called into the interview with HP, told everything I knew, gave them my phone and anything they wanted. I was told then that they knew he wasn't beaten, but they didn't think it was a car strike either. That's the most info that's been told to me. This is all completely locked in facts. Now, my opinion is I've known this group of kids for years and they're great kids. I don't in any way think any of his friends have the character to hurt each other or even be too scared to call for help if there was an accident they knew of. To me, they are innocent until I'm told otherwise, end quote, which is a fair statement. That's a fair statement, but that brings us to the adults in the situation and what they did, or what it's been claimed they did in the aftermath of finding out Noah was dead. Like I said, it's been reported that Renee, the mother of Jasmine and Stephanie Milan, went to the party house, ran everyone off, started to clean up. We touched on that briefly. And then some said there was a strong smell of bleach in the house. Avery's mother, Stevie, along with Renee and Caleb, insisted that's not what happened at all. They were just cleaning up basically any signs of alcohol consumption, cans, throwing them in garbage bags, just trying to clean up in general. And this was not an attempt to cover up a crime scene, with Stevie, who's Avery and Carter's mother, saying, quote, "It wasn't like that at all. It was a bunch of us sitting around and crying, and I think people were just trying to stay busy. By people, I mean parents, because we didn't know what to do. Not to hide anything, but to help our kids. Didn't know how to help them," end quote. There were reports that after leaving the scene of Noah's death, or the presumed scene of his death, Caleb Newton went to the party house and removed some guns. He put them in his truck. Now, when asked about the allegation that he'd placed a tooth at the scene or picked up one of Noah's teeth, Caleb responded, quote, "The tooth that was on the road was not moved that I seen. I watched a police officer circle it with white chalk. I pointed out a tooth to the police. I would not have picked that up ever," end quote. So it makes sense. Like maybe somebody saw him and he had his hand in his pocket and then he pulled it out to point at the tooth and they thought that he was throwing a tooth into the road. Who knows? Who knows? Now, when asked about removing the guns from the party house, Caleb said he took the guns, put them in his truck, and then brought them back to his house and later got them back to their owners. Why did he take the guns? Why did he feel he needed to take the guns? I mean, it sounds like the parents were just cleaning up any signs that the kids, who many of them were underage, had been drinking, and maybe they thought it would look bad if they were letting like their underage kids drink in a house where there was several firearms. I don't know. But we also heard Caleb mention that he inspected the ATV, or the UTV as he calls it, because I believe the technical term for the vehicle owned by Jack is a UTV. It's supposed to be like bigger. It's kind of side by side. You can ride side by side. That's why it's an SXS. And it's like a utility vehicle more than kind of a sport vehicle. I don't know. They look the same to me. And you heard Caleb say that it was very dusty, but there was no scratches or signs of damage. And if the UTV had tipped, it had been a minor enough tip to not leave scratches. Now, there's a theory, as we briefly touched on, that Noah may have injured himself during the UTV accident. He didn't know he was bleeding internally and kind of like started walking down Highway 81 and then dropped unconscious from internal bleeding, and then a car ran over him. But it really doesn't account for his injuries at the scene. And why would Noah walk a mile away from the party house and start wandering down Highway 81 with no shirt on? You know, it just doesn't make sense. Like, he wouldn't have tried to walk home. Maybe he was trying to hitch a ride, but why would he do that? It doesn't make sense. He didn't call anybody in his family to ask for a ride. He didn't go back to the party house and say, "Somebody bring me home right now," or go back to the party house and just sleep it off. It doesn't really make sense why he would have been in that place. And according to Caleb, the accident must not have been bad enough to even leave a scratch or disturb the dust on the UTV. Now, in the last few days, there has been more news about this case, and it turns out that the man who was first on the scene where Noah's body was found has spoken out. His name is Tyler Hardy, and he's a field supervisor for Gulfmark Energy. He told the Daily Mail that he saw Noah lying in a fetal position on the side of Highway 81 with blood pooled around his head, and so he and another truck driver both called 911. Hardy told the Daily Mail, quote, "Jack was the only person who walked up to Noah and told me who it was until the Terrell Fire and Jefferson County Sheriffs showed up," end quote. So it does appear that at least at that 5:53 time, when the 911 calls were made and Jack appeared, that there was already people there and Jack was not alone with Noah's body, and so it would have been very difficult for him to switch out his shorts if that had been the case. And somebody else would have had to have been there to see him do that. So who was the eyewitness that claimed he did that? We don't know. There's also, though, the issue of golf clubs missing from the party house. Apparently, Noah's brother had given him or loaned him a set of golf clubs that were brought to the party because they like to hit golf balls around and stuff. But no one knows where those golf clubs are. They were brought there Saturday night, but no one knows where they are, apparently. By the way, I'm not sure. Like, nobody's really come out and be like, "Oh yeah, we know where these golf clubs are." The golf clubs appear to be missing. And I want to go back to the claims made by Jack Newton and others, where it was said that some people went out on an ATV looking for Noah. There have been a few different versions of this story online, but basically it's been reported that the Oklahoma Highway Patrol was able to obtain a geofence warrant covering a 1.5-mile radius around the party house. And they saw, allegedly, around the time it's believed Noah died, 2 phones left the home of Avery Combs and traveled to the area where his body was found. After briefly staying there for a short time, the 2 phones returned back to the party house. This is just alleged, okay? Like, I don't, it's been reported in multiple places, especially on like Reddit threads and stuff, but I'm not sure where that information comes from. However, there was another report that I read where it said the geofence warrant showed that nobody went out looking for Noah on ATVs after he went missing. So we've got some contradicting information here. What else is new? And that's why this case is so hard, because let's say Caden Pressey is lying about the 5:15 time, about Noah wearing different shorts, all of this stuff. Let's say he's lying. First of all, what's his motivation to do that, to go against all of his friends? Second of all, if he is lying and those things aren't factual, you're muddying the waters of this case. There's already enough inconsistencies and weird timelines that don't align without the additional kind of drama of muddling everything up with false allegations and, once again, an incorrect timeline. I just don't know. But I also don't know what motive Caden would have to lie. And I would be interested in hearing from his friends why they think he's making these allegations and these assertions, if they're all in this core close group of friends. Now, Noah's family has said that the Oklahoma Highway Patrol told them there was no evidence on Noah's body or at the scene that linked him to the party house. And since no evidence existed that a crime was committed at the house, they could not get a search warrant for that house. However, others have claimed that the police were on the property the day Noah's body was discovered, and some of the kids even took them out to the location they claimed the ATV accident happened. However, a forensic search was never done. A few days before the party, Noah had purchased a new Samsung phone, and reportedly, he brought both his old phone and new phone to the party, and both of those phones have been taken into evidence by police, and information has been extracted from them. But there are reports that police asked for the phones of some of the other partygoers only to discover that either factory resets had been done, or the kids gave the police their parents' phones instead of their own phones. And to be fair, once again, there could be a plausible explanation for this, since we have a group of young people, some of, legal drinking age, some under the legal drinking age, having an alcohol-fueled multi-day party, punching each other in the face, wielding guns, they might be concerned with what some of the data on their phones would show, but still, it does add to the mystery and the frustration of it all, if it's true. They might not have been trying to hide anything nefarious about Noah. Maybe they were just trying to hide, evidence of drug use or evidence of alcohol use underage or, some other things that didn't look good. But it still seems off. And at first it was reported that Noah's clothes had not been recovered, including an American flag t-shirt he'd been wearing that day before he got hot and took it off, which apparently he always did. He'd show up wearing a shirt and within 5 minutes he was bare-chested because he would get hot, or he just wanted, the girls to know he was hot. I don't know. But however, it's recently surfaced that Noah's clothes were given away to his friends so they could have something to remember him by, which I think is weird. If that's true, because apparently it was Caleb that kind of doled these items of Noah's out to his friends. If that's true, that's weird. Why wouldn't you give his stuff back to his family? Why would you just think this stuff was now yours to kind of distribute as you see fit? Additionally, Noah's wallet has never been recovered. In April of this year, Jack Newton sold the ATV that Noah allegedly flipped, and he bought a boat. And reportedly last year, Jack told a friend that he supposed it was possible everyone could be lying, but they were all of Noah's closest friends, and he didn't think they would be willing to cooperate with the authorities if they weren't being honest. Jack also mentioned something about the Texas boys, and apparently this is a group of kids from Texas, because, this area of Oklahoma is right on the state line of Oklahoma and Texas. They were not part of Noah's core circle of friends who were there the night of the party. They may have been related to another girl that was at the party. Nobody really knew them that well, and they weren't causing trouble or anything, but they were there, and Jack wondered maybe Noah asked them for a ride home and then something happened. But he also said he doesn't see them being present when an accident took Noah's life and not calling the police or reporting it. Now, at this point, Sarah Stewart of Oklahoma's Department of Public Safety has confirmed last month that the investigation into Noah's death is still open, but authorities are not investigating the case as a murder. State police have not commented any further, and Noah's family feels that they're at a standstill. Worse than being at a standstill, they feel that they're back at square one. This family has been trying to raise money using GoFundMe. They intend on hiring a private investigator to look further into the bizarre circumstances of Noah Presgrove's untimely and tragic death, and I completely support this. I think that a private investigator in a case like this would be perfect, because these PIs, they can sniff out a lie, and they can really get people to kind of tell them things, because they're still technically law enforcement, but they're not actually technically law enforcement, so people feel almost safer to tell them things. But I definitely believe a PI is a good move. Noah's family strongly believes that Noah did not die where he was found. They believe he was killed somewhere else and dumped there. And Noah's sister, Madison Rawlings, said that she doesn't believe her brother would just walk home, given that he lives so far away. And he didn't try to contact anyone in his family for a ride. And I mean, that could have been because it was late. You know, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. And he's like, no one's going to be up to answer my call. But still, you'd think if he really wanted to ride home and he didn't want to walk, he might have at least sent a text and be like, hey, you up? Like, can you pick me up? Also, since the police have already ruled out a hit and run, it's very hard to speculate on what else could have happened to leave Noah in that condition that he was found. And his sister Madison said, quote, I believe that something happened, like there was an accident and the kids got scared. Whether it was when they were doing Fight Club, whether it was when they were on ATVs, whether it was, I don't know, someone got mad. I do not. I just can't imagine someone intentionally hurting Noah. He wasn't into trouble like that, and he wasn't ever into drama like that. End quote. So at the end of the day, do I believe that Noah died on the side of that highway? No, I think he was placed there. I don't think it was a hit and run. And honestly, having internal bleeding and not realizing how injured you were, and then kind of passing out on the side of the road and maybe being, struck by a passing car, that might work out. That might actually make sense. And it might explain why Noah seemed so incoherent in the shower, because he was already like having this internal bleeding and kind of feeling woozy and weird. But I don't know. I'd have to see some evidence of that. Like, don't you think at this point someone would have come out and been like, hey, yeah, actually, I was driving on Highway 81 that day and I remember running over something in the road, but I thought it was just a bump, or I thought it was like roadkill or something and I didn't think anything of it because it was dark, and now I realize what that could have been, just to like clear it up. Wouldn't somebody have said that by now? Unless it was done intentionally, unless, they were doing a Fight Club thing at the house and Noah like passed out, or his teeth got knocked out or whatever, and then somebody put him there so that they could run over him and make it look like an accident. I don't know, but I'm very interested to see what you think about this. So like this video if you liked it, share it if you think it's worth sharing, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure you tell me in the comment section, what do you make of all of this? It's kind of crazy and nothing really makes sense. And the fact that like there was so many people at that house party, the timelines shouldn't be this off and we shouldn't have this much inconsistency in the case. But let me know what you think in the comment section. I look forward to talking to you. And until next time, stay kind, stay beautiful, stay safe. I'll see you very, very soon. Bye.
Straight down, and that river runs deep, the mountains get steep, and the voices getting too loud. All these feelings I've buried, it's looking like a cemetery. They're coming back from the grave, calling out my name, better say a Hail Mary. Well, you don't know how deep it goes until it's getting you slowly. So you got to let it go. I got blood.